In 1975, West Germany was a rapidly modernizing, secular nation. Against this backdrop lived Anneliese Michel, an ordinary 23-year-old university student who spent her days studying and living quietly with her family. But her quiet life abruptly fractured. Without warning, Anneliese began experiencing terrifying episodes. She started hearing hostile voices echoing in her mind and reported seeing horrific, shadowy figures lurking in her bedroom. To understand what happened next, we have to look at her environment. The Michels were deeply devout Catholics. Faith governed their daily routines, providing the absolute rulebook for how they understood the universe, including the existence of literal physical evil. When these inexplicable terrors invaded their home, the family naturally reached for the tools they trusted most. They began to interpret Anneliese's psychological torment not as a biological failing, but as a direct spiritual attack. Initially, her parents did seek clinical help. Doctors attached electrodes to her scalp to monitor her brain activity, resulting in a dual diagnosis: temporal lobe epilepsy, a neurological disorder known to cause seizures, paired with severe psychosis. She was prescribed anti-seizure medications and psychiatric drugs to stabilize her mind. Yet the treatments failed to stop the hallucinations. Her condition continued to deteriorate, leaving the doctors frustrated and the family desperate. For the Michels, medical terms like psychosis felt terribly inadequate. A chemical imbalance couldn't explain why Anneliese exhibited an extreme, violent aversion to religious objects like crucifixes, or why the voices she heard specifically condemned her to hell. Convinced that clinical medicine could never cure a spiritual affliction, the family reached a chilling conclusion. They believed Anneliese was actively possessed by demonic entities. This complete breakdown of clinical intervention created a vacuum. Desperate to save their daughter from eternal damnation, the family turned their backs on the hospital ward and sought out an ancient, supernatural remedy. The family formally petitioned local clergy for an exorcism. After months of deliberation, the Bishop of Würzburg assigned 2 priests to perform the rite, officially sanctioning the church's intervention. The priests arrived armed with the Rituale Romanum, a manual detailing the church's procedures for combating demonic possession. The rites required grueling cycles of relentless prayers. They doused her in holy water and shouted Latin commands, demanding the entities leave. The reality of these sessions was physically punishing. During the rites, Anneliese would thrash wildly, injuring herself and others. To continue the process, she had to be aggressively pinned to the ground or chained to a chair by her own family members. Alongside the physical restraints, she was subjected to extreme fasting. Refusing food was interpreted as a necessary spiritual purification, a tactic to weaken the demons residing inside her. The very methods designed to save her soul were systematically destroying her body. The pursuit of a supernatural cure entirely blinded her caretakers to the immediate biological damage they were inflicting. This chart maps the tragic trajectory of her treatment. As the blue line shows the escalating frequency of the exorcism sessions, the red line tracks her physical health steadily collapsing due to severe starvation. This created a devastating biological loop. Dehydration and extreme physical stress are known triggers for epileptic seizures and psychosis. By withholding food and medical care, the rituals actively worsened the neurological conditions they were supposedly curing. This punishing cycle didn't happen over a single weekend. The family and priests conducted 67 individual exorcism sessions, enduring for 10 agonizing months. By July 1, 1976, Anneliese Michel's body finally gave out. She weighed only 68 pounds. The official autopsy determined the cause of death wasn't epilepsy or demonic possession, but severe malnutrition and dehydration. When a severe psychiatric crisis is fought exclusively with spiritual weapons, the biology is ignored. Her death was the direct, fatal consequence of treating a medical emergency as a war against the supernatural. The state intervened 2 years later. In a highly publicized trial, German prosecutors charged Anneliese's parents and the 2 priests with negligent homicide. The prosecution built their case strictly on medical facts. They argued that Anneliese's death was entirely preventable. If the defendants had simply force-fed her or called an ambulance at any point during her final weeks, she would have survived. The defense grounded their argument in religious liberty. They maintained that the defendants were acting out of profound love and sincere belief, fighting what they genuinely understood to be a battle for her immortal soul. The court delivered a verdict that tried to navigate both extremes. All 4 defendants were found guilty of negligent homicide, but they were given suspended sentences. None of them served a single day in prison. This split decision left the German public deeply divided. It laid bare a seemingly irreconcilable conflict, asking exactly where a family's right to practice their faith ends and society's obligation to protect a vulnerable patient begins. In the decades since, the story of the Bavarian girl who died during an exorcism seeped into the public consciousness, inspiring numerous hit films and cementing a subgenre of psychological horror. But the most significant changes didn't happen on movie sets. They happened quietly, behind the walls of the Vatican. Looking at this workflow of the modern church protocol, there is now a hard stop. In 1999, the Vatican updated the Rituale Romanum for the first time since 1614. Today, priests are strictly required to consult with medical doctors and secure full psychiatric clearance before an exorcism can even be considered. Anneliese Michel's agonizing death forced an ancient institution to finally acknowledge the limits of its own interventions. It established a permanent, non-negotiable boundary, ensuring that medical science must always stand between absolute faith and the human body.